My name is Barry, and I am weird. Even other weird people think I'm weird. And that's okay. I just gotta be me. I am what I am, and what I am needs no excuses. When I was a kid, all we had to play with was little bits of plastic, and you had to spin them around in your fingers. It's hard to believe now, of course. There was no explicit victory condition, but it was very popular. Load of them. All a load of rubbish. How are we going to explain this to future generations? I suppose we should be glad that you can't get fidget spinners for the PlayStation. Let me tell you how I feel about fidget spinners. I don't know how you feel about them, but I'm guessing however you feel about these things is how I've been feeling about all sports for the last 40 years. So now you know. Oh, look at this team, look at that team. Could not give a shit. Deeply surprised that you're talking about roughly the same thing as you were talking about 20 years ago, but with different colours. Look at the blue guys, look at the red guys. I mean, that's great, but not really. Think of all the things you could be doing with your time. You could have learned Spanish in all the time you've devoted to watching the blue guys and the red guys. That's... yeah. So shut up about fidget spinners. When I was a kid, I used to watch this show about a guy who was so weird he came from a different planet. But no matter how weird or stupid he was, and he was really stupid, everyone always loved him. And I suppose Mark was kind of my goal, my spirit animal. I don't like, actually, you know what? I don't like weird. I don't like the word weird. Not because it's so obvious as to take away any need to state it. Or not even because it's the sort of thing I used to hear every day in primary school right before having the shit kicked out of me by, no doubt, well-meaning cultural course correctors. The reason I don't like it is because it just shows no imagination or creativity. I mean, I know I say it all the time, myself. But maybe if you're weird, it's okay to say it, to call yourself weird. You know, like a reclamation... hang on. Sorry. Yeah, I'm reclaiming weird. No, I'm not. It's just a horrible word. Like a 5-year-old could come up with it. Can you do better than a 5-year-old? Anything is better than that. Just how about a dragon in a shoe shop? How about that? Barry, you're a dragon in a shoe shop. And I'd be like, what the hell? Oh, that doesn't make any sense. Exactly, Barry. That's you. You're a dragon in a shoe shop. Just try to be interesting, alright? I don't care about wrong or bad or good or anything. Just interesting. Be interesting. Everything. There's so much boring stuff in life. Just be interesting. Don't be a part of that. React against the boring, right? Anyway. Most people have a choice. Most people make a choice every time they breathe. Every time they decide to do anything, to live. You decide to live every time you neglect the always available option of driving a hammer through your eyes. Most people can choose to fit in or to plough their own furrow. And people who do their own thing tend to do so with no respect whatsoever for the needs of intensive agriculture. But you get the most interesting crops. That metaphor does not work. Just forget about it. I'm going to ditch it now. I didn't have a choice. When I was a kid, anytime I thought I had that choice, I tried to fit in and I tried to be like the humans. But I'm not, man. I'm nothing like those people. I'm nothing like humans. I really wanted to be before, but I won't be. So I've given up. And that's fine. I'll relate to the ones that wander into my field of vision as best I can. And those will just, like everybody else, is just going to have to love me or fuck off. That's my motto since about my mid-20s. Love me or fuck off. I'll die alone rather than deal with people who are dismissive and patronizing and... oh, God. Yeah, I'm weird, alright, fine. But given the choices seems to be between that and sheep, I'm going to take weird every time. That's just how it's going to be. So love me or fuck off. I see lots of posts on Tumblr and other places from angsty teens and angsty people who are older than teens about how awful their parents were. I can't relate to any of that because my parents were awesome in every imaginable way. And maybe we need some balance. So here we go. Buy the ticket, take the ride. Woohoo! When I was a kid, because I'm 41 years old now, there wasn't any Asperger's syndrome. Do you know that wasn't something they talked about much? Or even ADHD or what's the writing thing? Dyslexia. There wasn't that either. You were just stupid or weird, or kids with dyslexia were dismissed as stupid. Which of course is not true in any sense. There was none of the hot mess of spectrum behavior disorders that could explain me. So I was just weird. And it was obvious to everyone right from the start that there was something, like for want of a better term, very wrong with me. As a newborn baby, apparently, I never cried at all, and I slept right through the night without waking up. My mother took me to the doctor, but he just laughed at her, you know. My dad and some independent witnesses said I was reading newspapers with a level of comprehension at the age of 2, but I didn't speak in complete sentences until I was 6. I don't remember any of this, by the way. This is all second-hand information, but it does come with independent witnesses. It's not just parents saying, "Oh, look at my kid, he's amazing." Something my parents have never said to me, by the way. My parents' version of that was, "Oh, look, he's after doing something normal." That was my version of amazing, average, because I was just weird. I did not play well with others, and I don't even know if that's something I'd want to do. When eventually I made it to school, I was pushed around a lot. Yeah, I was bullied, I was punched, and none of it left me with any self-esteem issues, which I think, if you're being bullied, I think a part of it, I think you're supposed to have self-esteem issues after that. You're supposed to think, oh, blah, 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 you know. I never had any of that. It's just, I felt like it was something I had to go through. It was like part of the cost of being me. And I kind of regard it as an acceptable cost. So, alright. Very recently, I have learned of frantic behind-the-scenes efforts to deal with me, to make me more normal. And despite heavy pressure from everyone, my parents took a decision that they didn't want to make me more normal. They wanted to take me to... they didn't want to. Somebody suggested, you know, like a psychologist was offered and refused. And instead, my dad got me a dog. Nowadays, that's actually part of the recommended treatment for Asperger's syndrome, is to get the kid some sort of animal, because he'll probably find it easier to relate to than all the humans and their endless fucking unspoken social protocol bullshit. And that's more or less what happened to me. I got a little dog and he was my best friend, and it sorted me out like for a while until he died. When I was being bullied, which was pretty much all the time, in primary school, it all stopped in secondary school for reasons which are just as much of a mystery to me as why they started. Just stopped in secondary school, and all the guys who were bullying me just didn't. They were perfectly nice to me. Like, nice to me, not just ignoring me. They were nice to me in secondary school. Really weird. But when I was being bullied, they met with the teachers and discussed options. I was coming home with bruises, like, pretty regularly, which might drive normal parents to distraction or release the blood-dimmed rage. My parents adopted a more sanguine attitude, and they thought that any efforts to stop bullying in the school might be adversely reflected in, I suppose, even worse extracurricular efforts to break my face. I think they were probably right to do that. I mean, just in my particular case, by the way, none of this, don't take any of this as a general statement of policy. I mean, there's ways to deal with bullies now, but I think they were right in what they did, you know. There was nothing to be done about it. So they did alright. My parents never hit me. They never even raised their voices to me. I can't remember a single instance of either of my parents shouting at me for any reason, unless I was far away and it was dinner time. I couldn't understand for years that other parents would hit their kids and shout at them and so on. I didn't understand any of that. I still don't, to be honest. I assumed that these kids were exaggerating or lying, you know, but they weren't. And I found out afterwards, man, that some of these kids would actually get physically struck by their parents for, like... I mean, their parents presumably thought they were... I don't know how you'd justify smacking a kid. Like, I won't even hit a dog. But anyway, that never happened to me. And apparently that's quite rare. Never, not once was I ever hit or shouted at. Like, if there was a problem, like, I'm not saying I was a good kid. I would do all sorts of crazy stuff. But if I did something bad or stupid, my parents would just sit me down and they'd say, "Look, Barry, here's the problem with that. If you do this, then this happens, and we feel like this, and that's not a nice feeling, and blah, blah, blah." And everything was explained to me as if I was an equal, as if I was one of their friends, and not their friends, but like somebody that they could reason with, and not somebody that needed to be shouted at. And sometimes I'd do the same thing over and over again, like kids do, but they never got upset. They just say, "Look, the problem with that is still this, you know." And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it would work any better than smacking a kid. Would you want a kid who was doing all the right things because you'd smacked him into it? You know, I mean, that's... I don't know. It's not like Guantanamo Bay where, you know, that's not... The parenthood shouldn't be like that. Although I don't have a kid. So maybe, oh god, no. I am never going to... I can tell you now, even though I don't have a kid, I am never going to hit any kid. I don't... "Oh, well, how do you know? You don't know how frustrating..." Dude, I'm never going to hit a kid. Alright? I don't have to. There's some things you know, and you don't need to be in that situation to know how you'd react. Right? Some things are not like that, and some things are. And I'm never going to hit a kid. When I was a kid, I was as irritating as I am now. I was full of opinions and always asking questions, and sometimes, mm, so I used to get. That's why I used to get pushed around, in school, because I'd never back down. During the summer, I mean, normally I'd prefer to stay by myself, right? But occasionally, I'd get this idea that I should be playing with the other kids. So during the summer, I'd try to hang out with the other kids, and I always felt like I should be hanging around with the older kids, but they just were not interested, as I suppose that makes sense, right? Sometimes the other kids would play hide and seek, and they'd let me go first. Yay! Now, at some point, this would happen over and over again, by the way. Maybe this is Asperger's syndrome getting to me. This would happen over and over again, right? They'd let me go first, and at some point, my mother would notice that no one was looking for me, and that they probably never intended to start looking for me. And my mother said she often saw the older kids laughing at me, because I was hiding. And she had a hard time with this emotionally, but she didn't feel like explaining to a 5-year-old that no one likes him. So she just dragged me out of the hiding place. And all the time she says I was protesting, she said, "No, they'll see me. I'm hiding. You can't drag me out." So after a while, my parents decided to let me play hide and seek inside the house. But the experiences of the neighbours must have left some scars, because apparently I always gave my father very clear directions to my hiding place before going there. Like every 5 yards, I'd say, "I'm going over here. I'm going to hide behind the curtains," and then when I was finished in my hiding place, I'd always tell him from behind the curtains. I'd say, "I'm behind the curtains now. You have to look for me now. I'm behind the curtains." So I guess something stuck. These days I just turn off my phone for much the same effect. Now we're going to jump forward in time. Can you handle that? When I was 16, I went to a disco. Now the young people are going to call it a nightclub, but we called it disco. And it was being held in the Rowing Club, which is a building beside the river in Irishtown. And this would have been in 1989 or something. I don't know, sometime around there. I didn't want to go. This was just a bad idea from beginning to end. I still think nightclubs are a terrible, terrible idea. They're a terrible way to meet people. They're terrible. Everything about them is wrong. I was talked into it by my parents. My parents were always concerned about my reclusive nature. They thought I should meet people my own age and have the fun. Although it was never explained what fun meant. And I'm still not entirely sure. I was given specific instructions not to come home before 11 p.m. Right? That's my curfew. I'm not supposed to come... Or my reverse curfew. My few cur. No, oh no. Forget that. Just reverse curfew. Do not come home before 11 p.m. So of course it was noisy and horrible, and I was talking to a girl and she said she was having horrible pains in her midsection. And I said, "That's terrible." And her friend came over and said, "Leave her alone," because it was her monthly something or other. And of course, I had no idea what the hell any of this... I told her if she was getting stomach cramps every month, she should probably see a doctor about it. And then everybody started laughing at me. So I went downstairs and I called my dad and I told him I had to go home because whatever this fun thing is, I'm not having any of it. And I didn't even know what that word meant. And this was 10:30. And my dad just came and he took me home. And we're driving back, and I didn't know, I can't discuss any of this. How am I going to explain, clearly this is something everyone is supposed to know, and I don't want to feel any more stupid than I already feel right now, even at this age, Well, at this age, of course, I have Google, but I didn't have Google back then. So I didn't say anything. And halfway home, he says, "It's alright, Barry," he says, "you don't have to go to these things anymore." And that was just, I'm not going to tell you, you cannot understand the relief that I didn't have to go to any of these things anymore. I could just stay at home, It's not working out, man. This human thing's not working out for me. That was when I was 16. Oh, there's kid stuff when I was a kid. Well, never mind that. I'm going to go to... I'm going to talk about... That was when I tell these things to my wife, she says they're sad, that they make her sad. But I don't think they're sad. They're just things that happen to me. So I'm going to say something else that happened to me that I think is probably can be interpreted as a happy thing. Most of my life is sitting around reading, writing, or pretending to be cool on the internet. See, my idea of a good time does not involve fancy restaurants or roller coasters or lying on Caribbean beaches or anything involving alcohol. I prefer just going to museums, you know? Now, the first time I went to London in 1999, my parents were full of big ideas about what I should do. But, you know, that's where the British Museum is, in Great Russell Street. So I just went there every day. And it's fantastic. That British Museum is fantastic. They have a big room, the exact size and shape of the Parthenon, and it's covered with like a rough pencil drawing of the frieze and the metopes and so on. And every part of the Parthenon that they have, which collectively are known as the Elgin Marbles, every part of it they have is placed in the correct part of the drawing. It's a wonderful idea. It's great. And if you go to the Louvre in Paris, they have a similar kind of setup, but they have all the bits sitting on plinths. They don't have the drawing. They just have a room full of bits of marbles. And if you go soon enough after the British Museum, you can mentally put together the bits that they have with the bits in the British Museum like a mental jigsaw puzzle. It's just fantastic. So every day for a week, I'd hang out just in the Greek and Roman section of the British Museum until they kicked me out at 5:30. And that was I didn't even realise, by the way, they had an Egyptian section upstairs until I went back again, because I was so entranced with the Greek and Roman section. Man, that place is big. You need a lot of time. Don't just go in an afternoon. Devote days to this thing. The British Museum is fantastic. It's arguably the best museum in the world. I know it's a function of colonialism, and that's not good, but, you know, I didn't do that, so... They kicked me out every day at 5:30. And the proudest moment of my life was when I went back 5 years later, and the security guard in my section gave me a look and said, "Oh, you again." I tried to explain this Asperger's thing before, on many occasions, but also when I was running the @Ireland account. I thought I was going to pick up some resistance from the regular people, and some empathy and support from the autistic people. But that is not what happened, not at all. The opposite happened. The regular people were really nice to me and supportive, and I got trashed by a bunch of people who were also autistic. They felt it was not productive to talk about autism in terms of high functioning or low functioning, which I do. That I'm pretending like I'm better than other autistic people and so on and so forth. As far as I know, the professional people, the doctors, use terms like high function and low function to decide how to allocate resources and to give the kids who need the most help what they need. Like a lot of autistic people, they can't even talk. You know, like they're not stupid or anything, they just can't, whatever way their brain is organized, they can't talk. And they need help with that. Sometimes, I've seen this happen, there's a documentary called Wretches and Jabberers, I think. That's what it's called. It's made by these two autistic guys who can't really talk. They just mumble and scream. But when you give them a keyboard, they just type out what they want to say and it comes out completely fine. Hello, how are you today? That kind of thing. But when they talk, it's just the same phrases over and over again. So whatever's going on there. So I would be what is considered by these professionals as a high-functioning autistic person, in that I can more or less do a great impression of a normal human being. Until you get to know me. And then you realize something's a bit off. And I think that thing is Asperger's syndrome. I don't have a diagnosis because I'm 41 years old and there's no point in going to a doctor now to have a diagnosis. Like, I've developed a series of coping mechanisms that are so intricate and related to each other that in order to get proper treatment we'd have to unweave all those and then start with the proper treatment, so there's no point. There's no point. It's a waste of my time. Now, different things happen when people find out about this Asperger's syndrome thing. People who previously made no fucking effort whatsoever to try and understand me or be nice to me, or they say, yeah, that makes sense. It all makes sense now. Well, fuck you. Could you be more patronizing and dismissive? Because, to be honest, my autistic spectrum brain isn't picking it up. There's nothing more frustrating than when you do or say something and that someone else can't wrap his head around, you know? And they just say to themselves, oh, that's the Asperger's syndrome. Like, you know, maybe. I don't know. But don't dismiss it. Maybe it's just something you don't get. Is this how women feel every time they have a human feeling and some man says, oh, that's your time of the month? I mean, maybe. I don't know. Unless it, definitely isn't that time of the month, in which case, shut up, my man, in this scenario. There are also people who have made an effort to understand you and been more or less nice to you since whenever, and they say a very similar thing, like, yeah, that kind of made sense. And despite the fact that it's essentially the same reaction, that's fine. That kind of makes sense. Because everything is context. Now, for some reason, this Asperger syndrome attracts a certain kind of attention. Like, people talk about it like it's something they want to have. Like if you're the sort of shitcake who wanders around life telling everyone who has any problem, oh yeah, that happens to me too. Like why would you do that? If you think it's cool to have this thing, or you're telling everybody that you have it, or you're proud to have it, or you think, I've come across people who think it's the next step in evolution, you plank. It's not. In an essentially social species, having all your social information deleted from your brain is a disability. The next step in evolution, me arse. I don't think there's any Asperger's person who could survive without some sort of network of people who are not autistic around them. Like maybe they could. I know I couldn't. I'd find it extremely difficult if I didn't have some normal people somewhere looking after me everywhere I went. Like I'm not saying I'm incapable of anything really. It's just my reality. So I guess if you're making a big deal about having this thing, you're probably just a freelance asshole or an antisocial prick trying to sleep better. If you think this, on the other hand, Osa Quinna Shin Howl, if you think Asperger syndrome is a pain in the ass and you hate talking about it and you wish you would just fuck off so you can live a normal life and it's destroyed some of your relationships, and if you hate the way you seem to be constantly hurting people and everyone misunderstands you, then you might have it. Sorry. So I'm trying to be, upbeat and flippant about this. It's just hard to be flippant about these things, but you know what? If you make the effort and put the time in and you're interested enough, anything is possible. So, you might have Asperger's syndrome if, as Jeff Foxworthy would never say, if you tried really hard to make friends and you keep fucking things up and you have no idea why, so you just stop trying. Sometimes you don't know what to say to people, and people get this impression that you're aloof or mysterious or worse, pretentious or a self-righteous asshat. This Asperger's thing, the way I have it anyway, has a lot of crossover traits with just being a regular asshole. But I don't think it's fair to call me a selfish asshole, because some of the asshole stuff I do doesn't benefit me in any way at all. But I gave up worrying about it, how it looks. So, I don't know. One time a guy on I used to go a lot of message forums, because that's what I have instead of communication with humans. Internet. Oh my god, it saved my life. I could talk to people about things and I didn't have to look at them, Hang on, tea. So one time, some guy in a forum went off on a rant about how I'm up myself and I think I'm better than everybody else, because sometimes it comes across like that, But when somebody pushes something onto me, I just usually make it worse just to annoy them, So he said, "Oh, I'm think I'm better than everybody else." So I went away for a while and I came back and I pretended like I was a god, sprinkling little fairy dust all over my followers, And a bunch of people went with it because they thought it was funny, and it just drove the guy crazy. And he was the guy who owned the forum, the internet message board, and it drove him crazy, and he banned me. And all the people left. I didn't go anywhere, so they didn't follow me anywhere, but that was funny, I thought. Well, you might have Asperger's syndrome if I'm doing the Jeff Foxworthy thing, aren't I? You might have Asperger's syndrome if. People assume I'm mocking them no matter what I do. Sometimes. Like, sometimes I adopt the speech patterns of people I'm talking to. Like, if you're Swedish, I'll start talking in a Swedish accent and you might think I'm making fun of you, but I am not. It's just something that happens when I talk to people. But then gradually over time, I learned that they can all just fuck off. Love me or fuck off. And after a while, something completely different started happening. I mean, I still do it, but if I'm embedded in a group for any amount of time, they all start talking like me. You might have Asperger's syndrome if. When you tell someone you have Asperger's syndrome, they say, "Yeah, I know." This happened when I was living in the Asian with the Asian girls in Riverside. I spoke about before. I was reading a book about this Asperger's syndrome thing, and I was running through the 50-item checklist, and I was thinking to myself, well, surely everybody does that. And well, that's just a sensible policy. No, everybody doesn't do that. And yeah, it's a sensible policy, but only Asperger's people do that thing, whatever it is. And it was like that for everything. You can find these checklists online yourself. You don't need me to do it. So I came out one night, and they were all watching some Korean drama, and I said, "I think I might have Asperger's syndrome." And they all said at the same time, "We know." You might have Asperger's syndrome if your fixed way of doing things is more important than the things than trying something new. That might be awesome, but that's screw with your program. Like, routine is important to me. I like to think it's because I have a really bad short-term memory, which I do, but it's probably the Asperger's. It's hard to tell. I find myself doing things the same way over and over again, and I'm very reluctant to change something that works. Like, for me, it's like it works. To everybody else, it's just borderline psychosis. But to me, it's like, I'm not going to change something that works. Like, when I go to a restaurant, I have to consciously force myself to try something other than the one thing on the menu I'd order every single time otherwise. You might have Asperger's syndrome if someone has compared you to Mr. Spock because you do not have a reliable way to show emotions. Or, if they don't like Star Trek, they might say you remind them of Sherlock. Or House, Dr. House. Or Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. I remember the first episode. I was living in America when the first episode of Big Bang Theory aired, and I was with my friends, and they said, "My God, it's you." Because I don't know if it's the first episode, but he delivers this fairly, accurate description of what it means if you have any time at all for astrology. And I said, yeah, that's like that. But there was a laugh track on it, and everyone thought it was really funny. But to me, it was like, yeah, that's it. So they were like, yeah, that's you, Barry. But it's not me. I'm Barry. Hi. Anybody, they'll say, they find these, because they're entertaining to write, they're not entertaining to live, but these characters are entertaining to write. Anyone who's very good at one thing, crap at everything else, and sort of likable despite being horrible to everyone, especially his friends. And I don't know if that's something to be proud of. Maybe it is, I don't know. You might have Asperger's syndrome if you have no idea what to do in any social situation, and you have no way to explain the problem you're having, so everyone just thinks you're a weirdo, which, you are. I'm constantly trying to figure out what's expected of me in any given social situation. I'm aware of the social protocols in theory, but I have to remember which one to apply and how to apply it. As a constant thing, it's very draining. And I've chosen to be an asshole because it's easier, like the way I present to people. It's easier. Like, my friends understand, and everyone else wouldn't believe me anyway. Most people find this social stuff instinctual. They have the social machinery in their heads and it works. They're socially fluent. The concept of having to work out how to act is an alien one to regular humans. So it's very difficult to explain. Like, I've tried different examples. One was like trying to learn a new language that, you just don't speak. You could say it's like living in a world where everyone plays chess and everyone expects you to play chess, but you have no idea what the rules are and you have no way of working it out. Like, you can see chessboards everywhere and people moving pieces around, but as soon as someone offers you a game, you're fucked. It's really weird for me to see people being energized by socializing with others. To me, it's utterly exhausting. And sometimes I have to lie down in a bed as soon as I come home from anything where I've been talking to people. The human performance is very difficult for people like me. You might have Asperger's syndrome if you have no time at all for the social niceties and small talk. Small talk. It just seems completely pointless and utterly unfathomable. So you know yourself, this is it. Anything to do with the weather. Oh my God. Every single year in Ireland, in September, we get a blast of heat and sunshine. And every single year, some fuckhat says, oh, it's very late summer this year, isn't it? Very late summer. No, this happens every single year. I am not going to get involved with your small talk weather conversation because it's ludicrous and stupid. People say things, That being said. Yeah, I know. I was there when that being said it. Very frustrating. You might have Asperger's syndrome if you're watching a jail movie and they put a guy in solitary confinement and you have no idea why that's a punishment. That's probably a sign. If I ever go to jail, and it's definitely a possibility, my first move will be to go up to a guard and say, what's the minimum amount of fuss I'd have to cause to qualify for solitary confinement? And then I just keep doing that thing every time they let me out. And that's fine. That's me good. You might have Asperger's syndrome if you see the world in a completely different way to other people, but you've no idea why. So other people will be like, oh, you see the world in a different way, how interesting and useful. And I say, yeah, maybe, but I've no control over it. It's not like I'm this kind of genius applying my... It's just how my brain is operating, you know? It gets irritating when you get a reputation as a problem solver, which I have done. But all you're doing is stating the obvious. Well, it turns out that the obvious varies from person to person, and it's a bad idea to judge, you know? When I was in school, we had grammar classes, and they'd give us incorrect statements we'd have to make correct. And I remember one of these, because I thought it was funny, and it might not be, but I'm going to tell you anyway. One of these sentences was, my mother left me go to the party. And apparently the correct sentence is, my mother allowed me go to the party. And I was the only person in the class who said, my mother left me to go to the party. There's a lot of that in my life. I was the only person in the class who said. Yeah. You might have Asperger's syndrome if you do not like people around you when you're sick or weak. Most people, and I learned this relatively recently, like having people around when they're sick, you know, or vulnerable. When you have this thing I have, you just need everyone to go away because the energy, you just don't have the energy to power the filters, you know? You don't have the energy to deal with the whole thing. I have enough to worry about without trying to parse someone else's reactions on top of my unwellness. Layers of emotional responses I can't manufacture, you know, in my weakened state. You might have Asperger's syndrome if you keep hearing, how can you be so clever and so stupid? Oh, I get this all the time. It's hard to explain unless you've experienced it, but on one level I think my brain subconsciously refuses to process trivial information. You know, without my consent. It regards most day-to-day essential life skills as trivial. So my brain is fizzing and popping the whole time with literature and philosophy and stories I want to write and physics and religion and mythology and movies and comedy, and it keeps me madly awake for most of the night. But nothing really in the way of something that might help me in the real world where the humans live. That happens to me too. No, it doesn't. Fuck off. You have no idea. Fuck off. That happens to me too. Fuck off. I used to try my best to be normal, to see how normal things worked, to look at how normal people spoke and how they acted, but it just came across as insincere and even more weird had I just not bothered. So when I was a teenager, I had a lovely array of tics and twitches and nail bites and little noises and things. They're all gone now, man. I don't bite my nails anymore and I don't twitch or scream anymore. I just don't give a shit. I aggressively pursue the idea of being myself, and if that doesn't work for someone, well, one of us is leaving the room, and that's not going to be me. So, of course, there are negative reactions, dark mutterings about having a selective memory. Well, buddy, if I could pick and choose what I forget, I'd probably start with everything I know about celebrity Big Brother. So my short-term memory is shot to hell. And I'm so antisocial that I'm more or less dysfunctional in a room with more than one human in it. And to most people, that'd be an insurmountable disadvantage. But I've decided to surmount it. Is that insurmountable? Mount it. I've decided to mount. Oh no, that's not good. Surmount. I've decided to surmount it by developing my core personality, which is, you know, extremely sarcastic, cynical, racist, sexist, elitist scumbag who will make you laugh at the Holocaust or a child's funeral. And I have done. So if you know me in real life, by the way, and your thoughts inevitably wander to Jesus Christ, what the fuck did he just say? Now you know. Now you know why. Alright? You might have Asperger's syndrome if you don't like people touching you, or bright lights, or loud noises, because all the sensory inputs overwhelm your ability to process them. That happens to me sometimes. Bright lights especially. I don't like people touching me. Like if someone's touching me and a bright light goes on, that's like two things that I have to worry about. I live my life with the curtains closed. And if the television is on at the same time as the radio, man, that's not going to work. Just pick one. Like sometimes there's a radio on and a television on and people are talking at the same time. Man, that makes me feel physically unwell. I just leave the room. A very simple way, by the way, to make every social problem disappear is to be on your own in a room. And then they all just magically disappear. I have isolated the problem. It's everybody else. Hmm. You might have Asperger's syndrome if... I'm changing the pronunciation of Asperger's syndrome every time I do that. I don't know why. It's just something I imagine Jeff Foxworthy doing. Well, you never would. You might have Asperger's syndrome if you either stay quiet and say nothing or completely take over a room. Guess which way I bounce. Yeah, I dominate conversations. I dominate entire rooms. It's not my fault. But I'm usually the most interesting person in the room. Like, that's not my fault. That's why stand-up comedy worked for me. I got to stand on a stage for however many minutes and say whatever the hell I like. And people usually find it entertaining. Not all the time, but usually. But in situations where other people need to talk, this is not good. Like, I talk over people, I interrupt them when they're in the middle of something to ask about something else, I make jokes based on what they're saying, in media res and so on. This is not good behaviour. But, you know, I realise it's not good behaviour, but try to keep in the back of your mind all the time that I'm definitely the most interesting person in the room. People have an aching need to hear my stupid jokes and unnecessary comments. That's not my fault. Like, some time ago, I was asked to be on a panel discussion at a science fiction conference in UCC in Cork. And there were 4 of us. And unless they were all happy with the discussion turning into the Barry Purcell show, like, we'd have to do something. So I came up with a suggestion that we have some sort of soft toy, like we could use it like the conch in The Lord of the Flies. Like, no one gets to talk unless he's holding the conch. And it worked. Everybody got to say their little bit, and I only talked over them a few times. So that's an incomplete list of... You might have Asperger's syndrome if... because this is like 20 minutes long and I didn't want it to be this long, but there you go. And if I talk any faster, people won't follow what I'm saying. The next bit will be survival strategies that I have developed for Asperger's syndrome, which may not work for anybody else, but they're the only ones I have. Survival strategies for Asperger's syndrome. A hum was in the air. Now it's just Barry at the end of a sentence. So yeah, this is all personal to me. I am not a doctor. I just play one. I don't even play one on TV. I'm not going to say this is going to work for you. It probably won't, because everything is idiosyncratic with this thing. Unless you get it when they're kids. You know, I didn't get this... I mean, I did, obviously. I had it the whole time, but I didn't get the... I didn't know it had a name. Right? Until very late. So... It's better when you... If you're a kid with this thing, then go to a doctor, and he'll refer you to a proper Asperger's person, and they will help you work on coping strategies. Or if you're a parent and you think your kid has this thing... You know, if he has a tough time making friends, and there's... You know, there's something sideways about him, and you think it might be this, take him to a doctor, etc. Right? The following is not medical advice. I'm just explaining what happened to me, what I found useful, and so on. If you can take anything positive out of it, good for you. And, you know, if you take anything negative out of it, well, that's fine too, isn't it? Freedom and democracy. These things helped me, you know, make my life more tolerable and less suicidal. Let's be honest. When I was a kid, the 2 best things were they just left me alone and they got me a dog. Those are the 2 things that helped me the most. They left me alone for most of the day, and when I was 8 or 9 they got me a dog, and that was great. It helped me a lot. There was another living thing on the planet that I could relate to and be friends with and so on, and they didn't complain much. He got attached to me very much. Right. Also, don't hide your weird. Quit trying to fit in. It took me ages to work this out. But you can train the people around you to handle your shit, you know? Everyone's got some shit. No one's fucking amazing, right? It's like the old joke, you know? Think of the prettiest girl you know. Someone somewhere is sick of putting up with her shit. Right? But you can train the people around you to handle it. Like, I don't like people touching me, and I don't like bright lights like sunshine or even those not neons, what do you call them? Are they neon lights? The fluorescent lights, I don't like those either. So I've chosen to spend my time with a bunch of people who don't try to touch me. They don't come near me. And sometimes they make an effort to keep the lights off, and I don't have to tell them. Because it's kind of a pain in the ass, feeling like you're putting in on people. I don't want to break down people's will. I can't handle the lights, man. It gives me headaches and it makes me feel bad. Don't hide your weird, right? Just let it come out. It's going to come out anyway. You might as well work with it. Lean into it, right? There's ways of doing it. Don't spend 20 years of your life apologizing for yourself and hoping other people like you. Instead, be the sort of person that you might like or that you think other people would like. Just make yourself into that kind of a person by doing whatever you want to do. If you're good at something, keep doing that. Keep challenging yourself to do more and more of that. My thing is writing. I'm good at writing. I know it sounds like I'm blowing my own ass here, but I'm not going to lie. I'm good at it. I've been doing it for decades. I mean, no one's paying me for it or anything. Like, it's not my job, but I don't care. I'm good at it and I'm going to keep doing it no matter what happens. And the more I do of it, the better I'm going to be. And I keep challenging myself to do different things as a part of that writing. Like I've tried getting into, like in the last year or so, I tried getting into doing cartoons, which is very uncomfortable for me. But I'm doing it anyway. Like, they're not good, they're just little laugh cartoons, they're not amazing or anything. But the point is, I'm doing them. I keep writing stuff, and every time I post something, like, no matter how stupid it is, every time I post something online, it's one more little tiny thing that no one can take away from me, and I can look back and say, yeah, I did that. And like right now, the internet is basically infected with all sorts of stuff that I've been writing, all over the place. Although if the Tumblr machine goes down overnight and they don't keep backups, literally millions of my words will be gone. Well, I'll be fine too. I'll start again. And make it better. So yeah, another thing is find people who are tolerant and understanding. In other words, who aren't assholes. Now, regular normal people, they all think they're tolerant and understanding, but loads of them are assholes. And sometimes you don't have to peel too many layers off to hit that rich asshole seam. Some people just naturally understand that dealing with me and people like me is going to take a little more patience and a little more energy than it might with other people, And to be honest, I'm fine with people putting in that time and energy into being friends with me. I don't think I'm asking for any special treatment. You know why? Because however much energy it takes to deal with me and my craziness, it cannot possibly be the same amount of energy that I'm spending dealing with your normality. Right? Another thing is try to get into situations where your skills are best applied when you're alone. So writing is ideal. I mean, this is just me. Anything, music, all the creative stuff, to be honest. Making little movies, whatever. Like, I know a kid, I don't know, he's like 11 or 12. And he's got the Asperger's. He's a touch of the Asperger's, and he makes little movies with Lego men, And this is like, I saw him a few years ago, so I suppose he would have been 8 or 9 at the time. And he was making these little movies, and you know what? They weren't shit. Right? They're not shit movies. They're not like, oh yeah, well done, I'm going to put that on the fridge. No, they're really cool movies. Like, he did the whole thing on his DS. You can take, and he did it frame by flipping frame, and when you play it, it's like a movie. And he was playing with like little Ninjago Lego men, and they were bashing the crap out of each other and dragging bodies out the back, and it was fantastic. It was like a tiny little John Woo movie in Lego form on a DS. And he did all that on his own. There was no one helping him set up the shots or anything. And that's cool, because it works. And I do writing. And that works for me, because I can do it all on my own. There's a bunch of stuff you can do on your own that contributes to society and that people will value you for. I don't think you have to be the star on the football team, man, because you have Asperger's syndrome. That's not going to work. Like, unless you're really well socialized. And they get you when you're a kid and they give you all the training on how to be not that, And again, this is not advice. This is my explanation of myself. Please don't. I don't care what you think. This is my thing. Right? I was at a meeting once. Yeah, you see, every so often, as a grown-up, when you get involved with things that you're interested in, you are going to have to attend one of these things called meetings. And meetings are just the biggest waste of time. Oh my god. So this guy says, brainstorming, just say whatever's on your mind. Right? So, I'm not going to go into details about it or names or dates or anything, but I did. I said, this is a complete waste of time. Nothing good ever came from meetings or from brainstorming. So that's my brainstorm. And they said, if you can't be constructive, just go, Barry. So I did. I just walked out and I went home and I wrote the plan that they ended up actually using. For genuinely creative people, meetings are not just a waste of time, but they're counterproductive. They're a suck. They're a leech on your creative energy and your ability to act and your productivity. I can't think of any meeting I've ever been at that wouldn't have been improved by just putting 2 lines into an email and sending it to everybody. You know? Like, I don't know what the point of them is. It's just a bunch of people talking in circles about nothing. Like, dude, I could summarize this entire thing in 2 sentences and send it as an email to everybody, and they can stay home. Alright? Unless you're coming in for the tea and sandwiches, in which case, you know, I can't email you tea and sandwiches, obviously. I don't know why they have meetings all the time. Somebody somewhere thinks they're a good idea. Maybe it gives them a sense of accomplishment without having to actually do anything. Like watching a documentary about starving children. Or applauding when the captain tells you there's a marine on your flight. Or any kind of prayer. My wife says my superpower is asshole detector. She calls me the asshole detector. She reckons if you leave me in a room with someone for 10 minutes and they get annoyed, then they're probably an asshole. Like, I've had people completely flip out on me, man. I've had people... there's people now who consider me their life's enemy, who really, really hate me, just for shit I've said to them that's fairly trivial and obvious in my mind. Like, they hate me. Or maybe I was trying to be funny. You know? Like, I called one guy a coke-addled paedophile. And I know nothing about him. And he got so angry, like as if I had somehow heard this news about him and was just relaying the information. You know? Like, I don't know. Like, if someone called me a coke-addled paedophile, I'd be like, yeah, okay. You know? That's kind of funny, alright? Or if someone who knows nothing about me made any kind of judgment about me at all that was strong. Like, if anyone had a really strong opinion about me, and they don't know anything about me, that's kind of funny. I mean, I guess if it's going to affect your work, you might think that you should correct it. So you could say, well, no, I've never done cocaine and I've never interfered with a child. But that'd be about it. Like, you wouldn't go on a rant about the guy who said it. If it was obviously a joke. You know? I mean, how could you take that seriously? People take things I say seriously all the time, and they don't take the things seriously that they should. So I don't know. There are people who hate me. I have an enemies list. Like, I don't know who they are. I've forgotten. I mean, there's bunches of them. I had a page on my website of all the people who hate me. Who've told me, like. Just for no reason at all. Just some hilarious stuff. You know, I'm on to you, mate. You know? Okay. What am I supposed to do with that information? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm on to you. I don't know. Let's see if I can find some here. Now you get to listen to me talk while I am looking for people who hate me. That's a microcosm of my life, isn't it? Oh, here we go. Honestly, quite obnoxious, fickle and weak-minded. I actually despise you. This is a list of things people have said about me. I don't know. I'm not going to read these out. Oh, I used to have a Facebook group called We Hate Barry Purcell. And I was referred to on that as a ghost-eating cunt. And there was a bunch of people... I go ghost-eating cunt, by the way, I have no idea what that's supposed to mean, but I assume it's not good. A bunch of people signed up to it. It was a Facebook group. I have evidence of this because I'm looking at the screen cap I took because I thought it was so funny. And there was people who joined it, like, unironically, who really hated me and thought it would be a resource that people could use to share tips on how to hate me more effectively. What a bunch of... I mean, what a waste of anybody's time. Sure, I don't hate anybody. Unless it's funny. You know, I'll make the effort if it's funny. Like, I'll make the effort with anything if it's funny. But I don't think I'd ever hate anybody. Like, there was this guy... I was on a film group in Facebook, and there was this guy called, his name, I'm going to tell you his name because I don't care. His name was Chilton Nix, right? Now that's his real name. Chilton Nix, right? Now I'm not going to go into the details again, but I went into a whole long thing just about his name and how funny it was, right? But that's all I said, you know? I said, oh, your name, it makes you sound like this, it makes you sound like that. And he had a photo of himself where he's wearing he's like obviously 40 years old or something, like, but he has a bandana around his head like he's some kind of biker, but he works in a bookshop, right? So this to me just all fed into the thing I said to him, and I didn't hold back, you know. I was just trying to be funny. And he said, also his grammar was terrible. He claimed to be interested in reading in books, and he was talking, you know, all the hipster books like Gravity's Rainbow and Infinite Jest. Jesus Christ, have you seen Infinite Jest? Infinite Text, more like big long book by David Foster Wallace. Right? That book is so long that the guy who wrote it killed himself. Right? It's a long ass book. I mean, it's not bad or anything, it's just, and we already have a Ulysses. You know, we don't need someone else trying to be clever with it. So he was saying that he liked all these books, but his posts were all spelt incorrectly, and he clearly never read any of them. He just thought it was the kind of thing that he should have tell people, yeah, I've read this because I want to be part of the special club, right? Ooh, like somebody who says David Lynch is great, but they've never seen any of his movies, you know? I don't know, what would you call that kind of a person? Weak? I don't know, but I didn't say that. I just said, your grammar's off, which it was. So he said, yeah, this is what he said back to me. And I'm not going to go into what I said to him because I don't have it. I only capped his answer. But his response will give you an idea about what I said to him. Right? So he said, Chilton. Chilton. It says his name at the top. Chilton Nix. Could you imagine having the first name Chilton and then having the second name Nix, just separately, and then the two of them together? Mr. and Mrs. Nix, what would you like to name your child? Well, we were thinking Chilton. Like, you were thinking of naming your child in Chilton? No, that's going to be his name. Chilton. I'm not sure that... I don't think that's a good idea, Mr. and Mrs. Nix. Listen. This is our child. And if we want to call him Giraffe Balls, that's what he's going to be called. Okay? Alright, yeah, calm down, man. You want to call the child Chilton, that's fine, okay. Just, you weren't actually considering Giraffe Balls, were you? Oh, no. We were never going to call the child Giraffe Balls. No, his mother nixed that suggestion very earlier on. Anyway, earlier on. Very earlier on. Do you like that? Very earlier on. Adjectives. Adverbs. He said, you've got better things to do than waste your time with the biker. Or was that a beatnik? And I will need to work on my style and grammar. And by God, he did need to work on his style and grammar. Come into Barnes & Noble and say this shit to my face. That's what he actually said to me. Barnes & Noble is like a Waterstones in America. It's this kind of lovely bookshop where they play light classical music. And he said, come into Barnes & Noble and say this shit to my face. Oh, I nearly fell off my chair. Tell me how much you hate my name. Dude, I never said I hated your name. I said it was hilarious. Tell me how much you hate my name and how I look and how little I know about film. It's sad in a way. I don't think I'll ever get a chance to make you my bitch. That sounds like he watched one prison movie and decided that was how tough guys talk, you know? Oh, I'm gonna make you my bitch. You realise that means, like, do you know that means? Like, it's not cool for you either. Anyway, he says, are you a little Jen Weister punk ass with a third-rate education, weaned on manga and CGI? Take another film appreciation class and get the fuck out of this group. Which I did. I got the fuck out of that group because really, I never took any film appreciation class. I don't know why he said another. And he said weaned on manga and CGI. I don't know anything about. I don't follow manga of any kind. I know it's Japanese comic books, but I don't read them at all. And a third-rate education. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But there's a whole thing about him. You know what? I'm going to link to the whole thing in the bottom of on the bottom of this. It's nothing to do with Asperger's syndrome. It's just funny. If you like to watch idiots being trolled by people who are slightly less stupid, i.e. me. So yeah, I'm an asshole detector. Very quickly find out if somebody's an asshole or not if you just expose them to me for a few minutes. Like, I often say things just because I think they're funny, and I certainly don't think of the humanity. I don't think of people's feelings. Well, I don't feel bad about it. I used to, but I can't live my life being upset about hurting people's feelings. I can't live like that. So I've chosen to associate with people who either understand or don't care. I another Asperger's thing. I've gotten over it, but I used to have the same tone of voice for everything. Like, I'd have the same tone of voice for "I love you" and "everyone get out, there's a fire." But I just let all that go. Every so often I try to shake everything up and see who's left. Just say something, just to shake things up and see who's left. I call it the Asperger's colander. See who's left, shake it up, see who's left, see who falls through, right? Just say something absolutely outrageous, shake it up. What's the point in living? So that's this bit. Love me or fuck off. The next bit is the last bit. I have no idea what it's going to sound like. Ooh, the suspense. Can't stand it, I know you planned it, I'ma set it straight this Watergate. I'm a big fan of taking rap lyrics and pretending like they're 1950s Perry Como songs. Ballin' so hard, motherfuckers wanna find me. That shit cray. There's the vibrato, do you like that? Total control over my voice. I have, as they say, a rich inner life. But sometimes I'm not sure whether things are real or not real. Chronic insomnia doesn't help, and sometimes I forget to eat, and that doesn't help either. I can tell my wife something, and it turns out it never happened. But when I dreamt it, it seemed real. Maybe that's what happens when you write down your dreams, like I do. Now your brain wipes your dreams out of your mind after about 10 seconds after you wake up. That's why you can never remember. You remember vividly something when you wake up, and 10 seconds later, man, that is gone. That's your body doing you a favour, so you don't start making, decisions in the real world about information you had in your dream world. So maybe I should stop writing them down. Sometimes I'll start a conversation with my dad, and he'll stop me in the middle of the first sentence, and he'll say, "Is this something that actually happened, or something from a Batman comic?" Which is fair enough. I wanted to learn Korean and Chinese. For reasons that aren't important right now. I wanted to learn Korean and Chinese. And the main thing is that they're completely different languages with nothing at all in common, other than sounding like a bunch of ching-chong gibberish to people who don't speak either of them. But they're completely different languages. There's nothing in common. And there's no quick way to learn any language, at least not if you want to do it properly. You can get a tourist phrase book that spells out the bits phonetically, so you can at least, I suppose, get laid if you're in Seoul. But if you want to learn the language, you have to go through all the bullshit. Verbs, nouns, grammar, syntax, vocabulary, and so on. Because you're not a native speaker, there's no way around it. Unless you're going to embed yourself with native speakers. That might be a way around it. But you're not doing that, so no. So I had been memorizing lists of words and grammar rules and so on, and none of it's particularly friendly or amusing. But I pick up languages pretty quick, so it's not that big of a deal. Until one night, I had a dream. I was dreaming that I was learning Korean and Chinese. There were grammar rules and lists of words in front of me in this dream, and I was learning them. And I can still remember some of those dream rules now. But none of the dream rules were real, obviously. I just made them up in my head as part of some weirdly realistic dreamscape. And now I can't remember which stuff is the real Chinese and Korean, and which stuff is the fake Chinese and Korean that my brain invented for reasons as yet unrevealed to my conscious self. And the bad news from my point of view is that my brain is very, very good at simulating Korean and Chinese grammar rules and vocabulary. So I don't know what to do now. Suggestions? I will welcome. I'm talking like Yoda. I am. This one time in 2005, I was in my shop. I had a jewellery shop. And I was shaking hands with a guy. And we were almost connected with a slappy handy bit when I realised he had only half a hand. Yeah, think about that. So the focus became less on being friendly and more on maintaining the illusion that this man's hand was okay. This was a weird situation, and the questions came thick and fast, mentally. I mean, this was a 1 second period of time, but I had a bunch of stuff all crunched into that tiny second because I think fast. So I was wondering, how hard should I press? Like, if I press too hard and a guy who's got half a hand, it's just going to cave in. But if I don't press hard enough, it's going to be obvious that I have some sort of prejudice against bad-fingered people. So then I was wondering when I should disconnect. And not too soon, because I don't want to look like I'm disgusted. Which I wasn't, I didn't give a shit. Anyway, it's not my fault, I didn't cut off this guy's fingers, And now I'm starting to get defensive about my lack of equanimity in what should have been a very simple situation. So we were just chatting away, and it proceeded in a very superficial way, as most of my mind was still trying to not look at the hand or mention it in any way. Right? My main 90% of my brain is on this don't mention the hand thing. And, it's his fault. Because he didn't say, when he was putting the hand out for shaky handies time, after the business deal was conducted, he didn't say, oh, by the way, I'm missing half my hand, don't freak out, it's fine. He could have just said that and it'd be fine. But no, so now 90% of my brain is obsessed with this, and 10% of my brain is on this superficial conversation that's basically just holding up the 90%, right? And to my horror, I found the ensuing conversation liberally studded with references to being caught with his hand in the cookie jar, that you have to hand it to him, having green fingers, giving him the finger, finger food, making money hand over fist, not lifting a finger to help, wearing hand-me-downs, pulling your finger out, handouts, hand-picked, business changing hands, the hand that rocks the cradle. I have no idea what I was thinking. I just kept going, playing into his hands, and information being at one's fingertips. So Freud was right, I suppose, is the moral of that story. I've already gone too far, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'm just going to tell another little story of when I was in my shop. So again, around the same year, around 2005, I bought a studded belt. Because I was like, I wanted to be super cool and punk and goth. And, studded belt, that's it, as far as I was going to go. And I wore it one Saturday in my shop. And someone, some person mentioned that it looked gay. Right? Now, normally I wouldn't care. I don't care about looking gay, I'm cool with that. But for some reason, my state of mind was more fragile than normal. And I allowed some paranoia to creep in. By lunchtime, my concern was so great that I asked a random customer as she was going out that I didn't know, I never met her before. And I just said, look, I said, just before you go here, do you think this belt makes me look gay? And she said, it's not the belt. That's it. That is this week's Not Like You. About me being a weirdo. Next week, I don't know. Ask me questions if you want to know things and I will answer them. The last thing, everybody seems obsessed with the way I pronounce the word schedule. Well, that's how we pronounce it over here, schedule. If you want to pronounce it schedule, you can. I don't care. Again, if you like it, tell your friends. Please tell people so I feel like I'm not wasting my time. Like it with a little pushy button thing at the end. Subscribe if you want. And if you don't like it, please tell everyone you know. Please make a big deal about it if you don't like it. If you think it's racist and horrible and whatever, tell everyone you know. Thank you. I will be back next week, and I am